Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
As for President Trump and his response over the weekend, he addressed a crowd at Mount Rushmore, fireworks celebration in South Dakota on Friday that raised a number of health concerns amid the growing number of coronavirus cases. About 7,500 people were expected to attend, and photos show a packed crowd in close quarters with very few wearing masks. According to local reporting there, health professionals in South Dakota are now concerned the lack of mitigation efforts at the event could cause the coronavirus to spread in communities surrounding Mount Rushmore and in communities where those attending live following the event. As for the president's 4th of July message to the country, 3.5 years after vowing to end what he called American carnage at his inaugural address, the president painted another dark picture of this country. In two speeches, one on Friday at Mount Rushmore, the other at the White House on Saturday, the president denounced what he called the left-wing cultural revolution. He also pushed back against the movement for racial justice, accusing his opponents of wanting to erase America's history, as he said, indoctrinate our children, and, quote, overthrow the American Revolution.
The radical ideology attacking our country advances under the banner of social justice. But in truth, it would demolish both justice and society. It would transform justice into an instrument of division and vengeance, and it would turn our free and inclusive society into a place of repression, domination, and exclusion. They want to silence us, but we will not be silenced. Those who seek to erase our heritage want Americans to forget our pride and our great dignity so that we can no longer understand ourselves or America's destiny. In toppling the heroes of 1776, they seek to dissolve the bonds of love and loyalty that we feel for our country and that we feel for each other. Their goal is not a better America. Their goal is to end America. We will never allow an angry mob to tear down our statues, erase our history, indoctrinate our children, or trample on our freedoms. We will safeguard our values, traditions, customs, and beliefs. We will teach our children to cherish and adore their country so that they can build its future. Together we will fight for the American dream, and we will defend, protect, and preserve American way of life, which began in 1492 when Columbus discovered America.
That was President Trump on the South Lawn of the White House in that last speech you just heard there on Saturday. Jonathan Lemire, you cover this president very closely every single day. This appears to be his re-election message, that America is being overrun by angry mobs. There were brief references to the coronavirus and the public health crisis at the center of American life right now because of its health impacts and also its economic impacts. But it's clear where the president is headed here for re-election.
That's right, Willie. With bleak and at times almost apocalyptic language, the president definitely revisited his American carnage inaugural here. Only, as you say, only passing mentions to the crisis that has consumed this nation now for months. Instead, he leaned very hard into the culture wars, into sort of that base play, stoking racial resentment and grievance. And I think it can't be overstated what a departure these two speeches, Mount Rushmore one day and at the White House the next, are from what the usual message we hear from a president on the 4th of July, the most patriotic of holidays. There was no attempt here to unify the country. There was no bold statements of American greatness, of American unity. You're trying to bring the nation together, particularly now in a time of crisis where so many have died and suffered. Instead, it was just a divisive message. This was him as if he were delivering a speech at a campaign rally, not from the lawn of the White House. This was not a message to all Americans. This was a message to his base, and it shows in stark black and white, or maybe perhaps in this case red versus blue language, how he views the next 4 months of his term that will determine whether or not he gets another 4 years in office.
So, Michael Steele, let's talk about the political strategy of this, because you come from the Republican world and you've helped oversee a lot of campaigns as chair of the RNC. What exactly is he going for here? What is the strategy behind this? Because, again, he's plowing everything into a base that he's pretty well got locked up, if you look at his numbers, and has had locked up for about 5 years now. It doesn't appear from the outside anyway that there's any olive branch, that there's any extension of those who may be considering voting for him. It's just solidifying the people who he already has.
Well, it's us against them at this point. And the reality that the Trump campaign is facing is the us, which is the base support that you referred to, a lot of the Republicans on Capitol Hill that have sort of curried the president's favor in a number of areas. That is actually weakening some. The numbers are showing, both internal and external polling is showing that hard 95, 96% of the Republican base that's behind the president is now down around 84, 85%. There's been slippage. There has been some weakening of the reception of that message because, guess what? That base is also now impacted by COVID-19, as we see across the country in those red states. And the president also is feeling the impact. His base is feeling the impact of the economy, which is not recovering at the pace, even though the great jobs numbers last week are good to see. The reality of it is, businesses are opening, but the people aren't going out and shopping. They're not gathering to spend money the way they were a year ago. And then layer on top of that, Willie, the social unrest right now, the civic unrest, which is a good thing. This is a good, healthy conversation the country is just beginning to have. And you would think that would be something the president would step into. But that's not what his base wants to hear. That's not what they want to talk about. And so he's doubling down on those things that have motivated their anger, their frustration, and that us that he talks about in his Mount Rushmore speech. A lot of folks are scratching their heads and going, what do you mean by us? Aren't us all of us? Well, to Jonathan's point, no. It's those people who he feels are losing the grip that he's given them on some of these issues, some of these visceral issues, and he wants to get that back.
It is Monday, the 6th of June of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. It's still a holiday weekend, some consider it to be, since it is the summer, and since we're all supposed to be locked in. Well, I did not go to the Black Hills for that speech. Thank goodness. Boy, oh boy. I love the fact that a lot of maggots were telling American Indians to go home. They were already home. It's their home. I just love it. People come traipsing through your front door and say, get out. Go home. Well, I am home. And the maggots say, this isn't your home. It's ours now. Always has been. Because why? Because they say so. Talk about cancel culture. Wow, it sounds like Trump wants to cancel pretty much the Bill of Rights. Lawless liberals, pretty rich for a mobbed-up, treasonous Russian money launderer to be calling anyone lawless or liberal. But lawless liberals, come on. Yeah, he's trying to do the old Nixon silent majority law and order shtick. You know, it's those people. We know about those people. In fact, he's calling Bubba Wallace the only black NASCAR Cup. I guess they call it the Cup now, not the Winston Cup, because the cigarette companies got kicked out. But it's now called the Cup. The only Cup driver in NASCAR, the only black guy who had a noose in his garage at a NASCAR facility. FBI somehow called it a door pull, though it was the only door pull fashioned like a noose. And Trump wants Bubba Wallace to apologize for the hoax. But it wasn't Bubba Wallace who found it, took the picture of it, and released it to the press. That was the NASCAR president. But Trump wants Bubba Wallace to apologize, pretty much for being black. This is what Trump is going to campaign on now. I have to say, I'm shocked that a racist who paid the largest fine for racial discrimination in HUD history is going to double down on racism to try to be elected. He really thinks that the majority of actually, he knows the majority of America is not racist and will not vote for him. That's why they're going to suppress the vote. And they are doing a pretty damn good job of it. And they got SCOTUS to help because of all the Federalist Society judges packed into the courts, up and down the courts. Maybe we have to make some changes. Procedural changes that allow us to get rid of Federalist Society judges. I know, then the argument will be, well, then we'll only have American Bar Association judges. Yeah, that's how it used to be. Because they were ostensibly a nonpartisan group who judges whether judges are competent to be judges. No good rating, you don't get a vote. That's how it used to be. We could go back to that. I don't know, but then what's next? The League of Women Voters running the debates again? Jeez. They won't make it a spectacle. What kind of TV will it be then? Oh, no. Well, there's a lot of things that we need to purge from this great experiment. And they did not just occur in the time that Trump has been in office. They've been in the making, if not already entrenched, for a long time before. It's just that Trump came in and, we'll just say, weaponized it all. As if it hadn't been weaponized already. So, Trump had two speeches. One in South Dakota at Mount Rushmore. Did you know that they're going to tear down Mount Rushmore? How is that going to happen? Are they going to take cannons like they did the Buddhas of Binyam? I did see a special on the History Channel about the 7 great American wonders, and Mount Rushmore is one of them. Now, I have to say, technically and architecturally and engineering-wise, it's quite a feat. And yet it purported to be the first time that anybody took like a mountain and turned it into, statues. And I'm thinking, what about the Buddhas of Binyam? They had been there for how many thousands of years? I mean, bas reliefs in a mountainside. And the Taliban took cannons and tore them apart because they were secular. Or they were, I don't know, not part of the Taliban cosmology, shall we say. I hated it. I wanted to go and fight the Taliban right then for destroying art. How dare you? And I guess you could call Mount Rushmore art. But it's sort of like going into a church. Shall we say a stone marble church. And, I don't know, just carving bas reliefs of your deity or whatever. You know, your friends. Business friends. You just carve their faces in that church. The people that go to that church are not going to be very happy every time they go to that church and they have to see some guy running Joe's Car Wash up there, you know? As far as they're concerned, the guy's Joe's Car Wash. How are they supposed to know that he's like some great community leader or Chamber of Commerce president? No, a man of substance, obviously, because his face has been bas-reliefed in your church. So then when people want to maybe discuss whether it's right to have, you know, Joe's Car Wash, the president of Joe's Car Wash, who's also the president of the Chamber of Commerce, his visage up there on your marble stone church, right there in the altar, then the police come and bust your head because you're trying to destroy America. All right, I guess that's destroying America. Or it's maybe just saying, look, I mean, do we have to have Joe's Car Wash guy in our church, on our church? Do we have to? Maybe we could set it up so that there could be like a gambling casino, and then people win a lottery to climb the steps to the back where the Hall of Records is that never got built. Just to, you know, get people to, I don't know, climb the trail. The staircase doesn't exist, unfortunately, but it was supposed to be. And the Hall of Records is like some big old tunnel and big giant room, a grand room inside the heads. Eee. You go behind the eyes of the presidents there, and inside is supposed to be this great hall with a repository of all the sacred texts. I don't know. It was kind of weird. They said it was like a time capsule, and they put at least copies of all the great, you know, like Bill of Rights, Constitution, other things, on ceramic tablets into this like titanium vault that no one can get into. And they said, yeah, it's to store all of our documents, our great American documents, like the Constitution. And I'm like, what? They're going to lock it up so no one can see it? That was the plan? Wow. Yeah, I guess maybe we need to tear that thing down. No, let's not do it. Took too much work. And I have to say, it's a beautiful piece of art. Even though it's in someone else's church. Shouldn't have been done. But no discussion on the History Channel about that part. Not one bit. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? And, of course, that was Willie Geist at the top, talking about how Trump leaned into canceling public education. Yeah, he's against indoctrination where you actually learn about civics, other than where you get it from the Russians. Yeah, he thinks that we're being indoctrinated into liberal education. Doesn't even know what that means with a capital L. Because he gets everything from Vlad. That's all he needs. And he wants to get rid of, cancel racial justice, equal protection, and due process in his 4th of July diatribe. Yeah, and that was quite a diatribe. Yeah, this American carnage continues right here and right now. On the rest of the menu, experts say the Black Lives Matter protests are not causing coronavirus to spread, but it sure has raised fascist tendencies to a fever pitch. Feverish, yeah, over 104. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse warned of political pressure by Trump and Barr to thwart an investigation of a private espionage firm hired to go after U.S. green groups. We're not talking about the party. We're talking about, the Sierra Club. What? And 7 men were arrested after they taunted a black family by yelling racial slurs, using Nazi salutes, and threatening to fight police during a 4th of July incident in an Oregon beach town. I keep telling everybody, Oregon was the Constitution, the original Constitution was to create a white utopia, and some people just really want that back. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where police probe a political motive as the 6th Chechen Russian is conveniently shot dead. Yeah, I wonder if there's a political motive. Well, when the 6th one is conveniently shot dead, it might be convenient. I wonder where that leads to. Well, we know. And Israel says it is not necessarily behind every mysterious Iran nuclear site incident. Not everyone. Some of them are just accidents. The others, maybe. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page, right there by the social media scroll, is our chat room link, definitely located by Superior Graphic Design. That graphic design is brought to us by Tom. Thank you, Tom. And our chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. How about sending us I'm going to be very bold about this now. If you sent us the cost of a espresso type coffee drink, which you used to be able to do with impunity. Remember those days? If you could afford to send that to us once a month, that so helps us being able to pay our bills. And we also need to get machinery and the needed software still. At the end of the year, all sorts of things are going to be shutting down in terms of software. And the old machines will not support it anymore. Darn it. Anyway, your help, for those of you who have been doing this with us for all these many years, has greatly mitigated all of those. We had to buy newish machinery about halfway through this resistance endeavor, and we'll have to do it again. And but anyway, just paying our regular bills. Oh, what a chore. And they keep going up, even during a pandemic. How dare they? So thank you for your generosity. And also, I have to say thank you to those who have increased their monthly contribution. I know it's probably temporary. That's okay. But boy, does every bit help. Thank you. And you have allowed us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio, if you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that also. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on social media, which Twitter is part of, not Facebook. When Kelly gets to, she posts it on our Netroots Radio Facebook page. But I'm still suspended because that's what they do to liberals, and they allow the QAnon people to stay on and just say all sorts of things. And if you correct them, they will get you suspended for the most ridiculous reasons. It has nothing to do with what you said. The accusation apparently is enough for Facebook to say, oh, that QAnon person made the accusation against the liberal. Kick out the liberal. Sort of making Bubba Wallace apologize for being a victim of racism. Well, I wouldn't put it that far, but You know what I mean. Darn them. Anyway, it does go out on social media, and the show notes and links diary is very much an integral part to this multimedia operation. So check out those links. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And also pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Okay, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays is out of the American Independent by the way of the American Independent, but by the Associated Press. There is little evidence that the protests that erupted after George Floyd's death caused a significant increase in U.S. coronavirus infections, according to public health experts. But what do they know? Experts don't know anything. It's the know-nothings that know everything, and they'll tell you. And you better believe it, or else they're going to have you canceled. And I'm not kidding. If the protests had driven an explosion in cases, experts say, the jumps would have started to become apparent within 2 weeks and perhaps as early as 5 days. But that didn't happen in many cities with the largest protests, including New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, and D.C. In what's considered the first systemic look at the question, a team of economists determined that only 1 in 13 cities involved in the earliest waves of protest after Memorial Day had an increase that would fit the pattern, and that city was Phoenix, where experts say cases and hospitalizations surged after a decision by Governor Doug Ducey to end Arizona's stay-at-home order on May 15th and ease restrictions on businesses. Arizona residents who were cooped up for 6 weeks flooded Phoenix area bar districts, ignoring social distancing guidelines. Well, drunks don't know how to social distance. They fall into each other all the time. In many cities, the protests actually seemed to lead to a net increase in social distancing, as more people who did not protest decided to stay off the streets. And that study's lead author, Deval Dave of Bentley University near Boston. Now, we should recognize that the Black Lives Matter protests, by and large, people wear masks, and they're outside, where droplets can be dispersed and diluted much, within the vast expanse of the atmosphere. Whereas the maggot rallies, they make fun of you if you wear a mask. They don't wear masks, and they like to pack auditoriums. Or if they can't pack the auditorium, they like to pack everybody close together anyway. Drawing data from compiled from Johns Hopkins, the AP reviewed trends in daily reported cases in 22 U.S. cities with protests. It found post-protest increases in several cities, including Houston and Madison, Wisconsin, where experts say other factors were more likely the main drivers. Because there's a bunch of maggots there who refuse to wear masks. Health officials are still investigating case surges in various states, and more data may come in, hopefully, if the Trump administration allows the data to come in. But experts believe that if the protests did have a big impact on cases, stronger signs would be apparent by now. Christopher Being and Raphael Sater of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Democratic U.S. Senator says he has written to Attorney General William Barr outlining his concerns about potential political interference by the Trump administration in an investigation of a private espionage firm that targeted environmental groups in the U.S. Last month, Reuters reported that U.S. law enforcement was investigating aspects of a 7-year-long hack-for-hire operation carried out by a New Delhi-based firm called Bell Trucks Infotech Services on behalf of unknown clients. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, said in a letter to Barr and in an interview with Reuters on Thursday that the investigation was being carried out by prosecutors in New York and that unnamed sources had alerted his office that the DOJ has taken what he said was an interest in the matter which seems inconsistent with ordinary procedure, because whenever Bill Barr does it, that means you've been barred. Whitehouse declined to provide details or identify his sources, saying only that they had first-hand knowledge of the matters under investigation. Whitehouse said he believed the interest was inconsistent with the independence of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan, and raised the possibility that the case will fall victim to potential political pressure from Washington. Really, now? The DOJ, the White House, and the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York did not respond to messages seeking comment. Bell Trucks owner Sumit Gupta did not respond to repeated messages seeking comment either. In previous conversations with Reuters, he denied wrongdoing. Reuters reported that among the organizations Bell Trucks targeted were environmental groups that campaigned against the oil and gas industry, including Greenpeace, the Climate Investigation Center, and the Union of Concerned Scientists. Whitehouse said that given both the influence he says the fossil fuel industry has wielded with Republican President Donald Trump's administration and recent efforts to water down or reverse the prosecutions of Trump allies, he was right to be concerned that the targeting of green groups would not be properly looked into. The risk is obvious that the investigation will be slow-walked or curtailed to protect Donald Trump's donors and allies in that industry, Whitehouse said. Whitehouse said he asked Barr to preserve any communications between his office and the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York and provide a log of all contact regarding the Bell Trucks case. Well, I'm sorry, Sheldon. That's probably top secret. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. 7 men were arrested after police say they taunted a black family by yelling racial slurs and using Nazi salutes during a 4th of July incident in an Oregon beach town. The men challenged police to a fight when officers arrived at the beach in Lincoln City and set off fireworks that were banned. And that's according to a police report. They were arrested on suspicion of charges including riot, disorderly conduct, interfering with police, and possession of illegal fireworks. The men are from Clark County, Washington, police said. They were cited and released. Wow. Did they stop at the Burger King to get them some burgers first? The men arrested, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce their name because they're all Russian. Look at that link and you'll see. A 7th man refused to identify himself. Listed phone numbers could not be found for the men. It is unknown if they have an attorney. The Central Oregon beach town is about 88 miles southwest of Portland. It's actually quite beautiful. All right, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, living life to the fullest. Movies about dying young are nothing new, nor movies about drug addiction. However, few movies have ever successfully combined the two to create a surprisingly upbeat dramedy the way that Sharon Murphy has in her tender coming-of-age picture Baby Teeth. This Australian import, featuring the always wonderful Ben Mendelsohn, tells the story of Mila, a teenager battling cancer who happens to fall in love with an older, drug-dealing boy named Moses. To say Moses has issues is an understatement. However, Mila's seemingly normal middle-class family isn't without problems either. The aforementioned Mendelsohn plays Mila's father, Henry, who is overly dependent on medication and denial to address the serious cracks in his marriage, as well as the fact that his daughter may not be long for this world. Understandably, Henry and his wife Anna are upset by their daughter's choice of a boyfriend, but nonetheless they allow the relationship to continue because they don't want to deny Mila's wishes given all she's been through. As it turns out, though, Moses isn't the disaster that they and the audience thought he would be, and he actually teaches all of them important lessons about forgiveness and living life to the fullest, even with unfavorable odds. Baby Teeth is one of those rare films about death that avoids hospital scenes and medical jargon. The cast is excellent, with Eliza Scanlon standing out in her role as Mila. Scanlon was best known previously for playing the Amy Adams character's little sister in HBO's Sharp Objects. She has an amazingly expressive face and is totally believable as a normal teen who just happens to have a terminal illness. Creatively shot and well scripted, Baby Teeth is a quiet, understated gem of a movie you should seek out and watch. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. The image of a dorsal fin cutting through the sea surface is iconic. But scientists studying the stomach contents of young great white sharks off the coast of Australia were in for a surprise when they learned that the predators seem to spend a lot of time patrolling the sea floor.
They have a predominantly fish-based diet, which is not unexpected for juvenile white sharks. The most important prey species we identified was Eastern Australian salmon.
University of Sydney graduate student Richard Granger. He and his team sorted through the stomach contents of more than 50 juvenile white sharks that died after being entangled in shark exclusion nets meant to protect swimmers.
The overall unexpected finding was just the diversity and importance of bottom-dwelling species, things like stargazers, which bury themselves in the sand. They're quite strange-looking fish. And flathead, but also stingrays.
People actually did not have a good idea of the particulars of great white shark diets. As Granger points out, the sharks enjoy protections throughout the world, so most researchers estimated their diets through the chemical markers that they can ethically access by taking small skin samples. These measurements indicate at what level of the food chain the predator is feeding, but not the actual critters that make up their meals.
There's quite a lot of evidence that lots of different animals, so even carnivores, omnivores, herbivores, they'll select different prey or food based on a particular balance of nutrients.
Granger hopes that by further understanding what juvenile white sharks like to eat, he can begin to piece together how and why they make their predatory choices. The study was published in the journal Frontiers in Marine Science.
Understanding and predicting when sharks might be more abundant in certain areas would be an ultimate end goal.
Avoiding or mitigating human-shark conflicts means understanding the shark's nutritional goals. And if researchers can anticipate where and when sharks are likely to spend their time hunting, they can better protect humans from getting bitten and sharks from getting killed.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. After a storm or disaster, it's important to eat only safe food. Throw away perishables like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and leftovers stored above 40 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 hours or more. Throw away food with an unusual odor, color, or texture. Throw away food that may have come in contact with floodwater, including food in swollen, punctured, and damaged cans. When in doubt, throw it out.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. A social culture of reform in pre-Civil War America was the fertile soil in which a variety of movements against slavery grew. These movements would later lead to the passage of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. Among the most important abolition societies was the American Anti-Slavery Society, founded in Philadelphia in 1833 by William Lloyd Garrison and Arthur Tappan. The society espoused the immediate, uncompensated abolition of slavery. Garrison championed Frederick Douglass, the brilliant abolitionist and former slave who became the foremost African-American voice opposing slavery. Abolition societies attracted many women activists, although men sometimes opposed women's participation, causing abolitionist organizations to split apart. Even though traditionalist men sometimes opposed women's activism, women succeeded in playing significant roles in organizations opposing slavery. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
DACA lives, for now.
Soy Javier Luengo Garrido, organizador de la ACLU de Massachusetts, y este es el Minuto de Libertades Civiles, con el abogado de ACLU, Bill Newman.
The Supreme Court, 5-4, has ruled that the Trump administration's order to destroy DACA was arbitrary and capricious, a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. In a word, illegal. DACA, Delayed Action on Childhood Arrivals, a President Obama-initiated program, allows immigrants brought to the United States as children to continue to live here without fear of deportation for renewable 2-year periods. To be eligible for DACA, an immigrant must have lived continuously in the United States since at least 2007, must have come to the United States when younger than 16, must be in school or have achieved a high school diploma, or have been honorably discharged from the United States Armed Forces, and may not have been convicted of a serious crime. Most of the 800,000 young people who applied for DACA arrived when they were 10 or younger, so this is the only country they've known as home. Immigrant rights advocates applauded the decision, but the Trump administration vowed to revoke DACA again. DACA-eligible immigrants are safe from deportation for the moment, but they still must live with enormous uncertainty about their future.
El Minuto de Libertades Civiles es posible gracias a ACLU, porque la libertad no puede defenderse a sí misma.
6 months into the COVID-19 pandemic, the disease is presently raging anew because corporate-serving public officials rush to open the economy, causing more infections and deaths. So gosh, what to do now? Of course, let's take away the health care coverage of some 23 million Americans. Backed by Trump and company, that's the brilliant health care priority being pushed by top Republican officials in 18 states. Led by Greg Abbott, the mangy governor of Texas, these GOP-controlled states have chosen, in this time of national health crisis, to run to the Supreme Court asking its Republican majority to strike down Obamacare. If they get their way, millions of families would lose their health coverage, and insurance giants, which are major campaign donors to Abbott and other GOP officials who are pushing the court action, would again be able to restrict coverage that millions of others now have. It's perverse that any other governor would follow Abbott's lead, for he presides over a healthcare disaster in Texas. It has America's highest number of uninsured people, including a record number of unprotected children. Killing Obamacare would add another million Texans to the 18% who are already uncovered, plus it would then not be there for some 3 million other Texans expected to lose their job-based insurance policies in today's growing pandemic recession. The healthcare nightmare pushed by the Texas governor has been called moral insanity. So naturally, Donald Trump rushed to embrace it. He recently directed his attorney general to back Abbott's effort to pressure the high court to scrap Obamacare. This is Jim Hightower saying, however, this political maneuver is so unpopular, especially today, that there was no trumpeting of the legal filing by the White House. Instead, it was tiptoed over to the court at 10:30 on a Thursday night, hoping you and I wouldn't notice.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1911. That was the day that the song The Preacher and the Slave first appeared in the Little Red Songbook. The Little Red Songbook was a compilation of labor songs published by the Industrial Workers of the World Union. The booklet was pocket-sized, so labor activists could carry it with them wherever they would go. Music was an important part of the IWW labor culture. Joe Hill was probably the most well-known of the IWW songwriters. Many of the songs penned during this era are still sung at labor rallies and meetings today. But not everyone appreciated the music and the message of the IWW, a radical union that called for all workers to unite together. When IWW activists, or wobblies as they were called, would give speeches, they would sometimes be heckled and jeered. Authorities would harass and break up meetings. Sometimes, Salvation Army brass bands that were competing for space and audiences on street corners would disrupt IWW rallies with their music. Joe Hill wrote his song, The Preacher and the Slave, in response to this musical disruption. He set the lyrics to the tune of the hymn In the Sweet By and By. Often, IWW songwriters satirized hymns played by the Salvation Army, which the Wobblies dubbed the Starvation Army. The lyrics tell of of long-haired preachers who tell workers to stop agitating because they will eat by and by. The song was a critique of religious leaders who did not help working people. It became one of the most popular Joe Hill tunes.
Long-haired preachers come out every night. They try to tell you what's wrong and what's right.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 61 degrees Fahrenheit, expected to be a tad cooler than we were over the weekend. We were a bit over 90 over the weekend, and we are expected to be, well, only in the low to mid-80s today. Some clouds this morning will give way to generally sunny skies for the afternoon. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Tonight will be clear to partly cloudy with lows in the mid-50s, winds out of the northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Scour it, please. Tomorrow we will have partly cloudy skies with highs near 80, which means here at the mothership 80 to 85. And winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. We had a marked increase in confirmed coronavirus infections in Jackson County of Southern Oregon. Over the weekend, on Friday, we had 114. Today we have 131, but that is actually from Friday to Saturday, and we'll get today's numbers, actually Sunday's, and Saturday's numbers in a few hours. And I expected to go up because, hey, we got a bunch of Nazis saluting, doing the Nazi salute. Wow. Nazis from Russia? Anatov? Wow, there's a lot of weirdness there. Anyway, they're not wearing masks. And they're spreading their droplets everywhere. And that's the way they want it. Grass pollen right outside the mothership's window is high. The air quality index for the Rogue River Valley region is good at 28 parts per million, and that daytime UV index remains very high at 9. So if you have that kind of number where you're at, do take care, and you know what I mean by take care. Slather on the SP50 in copious amounts. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.07 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles. And relative humidity is at 84%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 68 and partly cloudy. Paris is 72 and sunny. Rome is 90 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 90 and fair. Kabul is 82 and fair. Hong Kong is 83 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 79 degrees with a rain shower and a flood advisory. Did you see that hundreds of people died in floods in one little town? Sydney, Australia is 55 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 and sunny with a wind advisory, by the way, so take care if you're on a small craft on or offshore, on the bay or offshore. And New York is a sweltering 88 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press, and I wouldn't blame them one iota for being anonymous, because whenever there's a convenient news story about a convenient death that has anything to do with Vlad, you want to be anonymous because you don't want something convenient happening to you. Police in Austria say they have detained a Russian man after one of his compatriots was shot dead near Vienna late Saturday in what Austrian media is reporting as a possible political assassination. Austrian news agency APA reported that the 43-year-old victim was an ethnic Chechen who had lived in Austria for more than a decade. The Courier Daily reported the victim was a critic of Ramzan Kadyrov, the authoritarian leader of Russia's Chechnya region. Lower Austria police said in a statement that a 47-year-old suspect did not resist when he was detained by armed officers in Linz. The circumstances of the crime are unclear, police said, but added that the investigation was being handled by regional anti-terrorism authorities. A spokeswoman for Lower Austria Police, Sonja Stamminger, said that a second person was detained in connection with the killing on Sunday, but declined to provide further details. The killing, which occurred in the Vienna suburb of Gersdorf, follows several other attacks on Chechens abroad. German prosecutors last month charged a Russian man in the brazen daylight killing in Berlin of an ethnic Chechen from Georgia. The victim had fought Russian troops in Chechnya and fled to Germany in 2016. Prosecutors said the suspect had been tasked with the killing by Russian authorities. In February, Imran Aliyev, who also had a YouTube channel criticizing Chechen leader Kadyrov, was found stabbed to death in a hotel in Lille, France. That same month, another Chechen dissident, Tamru Abdurahmanov, was attacked in Sweden.
Je te donne seul mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees, this time at Reuters, brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City, Ash Mondays. Israel's defense minister said it is not necessarily behind every mysterious incident in Iran after a fire at the Natanz nuclear site prompted some Iranian officials to say it was the result of cyber sabotage. Israel, widely believed to be the region's only nuclear power, has pledged never to allow Iran to obtain atomic weapons, saying Tehran advocates its destruction. Iran denies ever seeking nuclear arms and says its atomic program is peaceful. The underground Natanz site, where a one-story building was partly burned on Thursday, is the centerpiece of Iran's uranium enrichment program and monitored by inspectors by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and that's a UN nuclear watchdog. Asked whether Israel had anything to do with mysterious explosions, Israel Defense Minister Benny Gantz said, "Not every incident that transpires in Iran necessarily has something to do with us." Wink, wink. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on. And we're going to meet up tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver.